What's going on, y'all? Shellz here, and welcome back to another episode of The Script with Shellz, the #1 League of Legends interview series on the internet. Hosted by me, I'm Shellz, and today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by eXyu, the Cloud9 Amateur former jungler, and I wish this was under much more pleasant circumstances, but eXyu, how you doing today, man?
Uh, I'm doing okay. I'm glad to be here. Today's definitely been an interesting day, to say the least. A lot has happened in the last 3 hours, so yeah, but I'm doing okay.
Yeah, look, we had this interview scheduled, I think, a couple of days ago, and I was all ready to talk about what we're going to talk about here in a second, Scouting Grounds. You and I believe your second year playing competitive, but this is a really huge year for you. And let's get straight into it. I don't want to waste any time. We can just go right to this right here. You were scheduled to be at Scouting Grounds, and the news came down from the LCS official Twitter page that you were no longer invited. Can you give me a little bit of insight on what exactly happened in that situation?
Yeah, I think it was just a huge mess, honestly. So initially I wasn't invited because I think I was like the third prospect, so I would be first in line as a backup, and then I found out a few days after everyone else had gotten their invite that I was actually invited since someone chose not to go, and so I was really excited. I started prepping mentally, like started focusing more, like watching scrims and like just getting ready to really showcase what I can do. And then today, 2 days before the event, I found out I'm actually not playing, and so it was definitely like a kick in the gut. But it's kind of, you know, stuff like this just happens, I guess. It's really unfortunate, but it does. So
Yeah, like according to the LCS, they said there was some sort of mistake with the script used to run the numbers. Now, I won't lie to you. I don't know what the mathematical process was for determining players, but I actually watched you play this Proving Ground split. I think we ended up actually AOE played you guys. I think in the first round of Proving
yeah,
Grounds, you guys got the dub on that one. And look, you played. I think you played extremely well, and I won't lie to you. I definitely believe you had every right to be able to go to Scouting Grounds and prove what you have. But I do want to say that I actually very much so appreciate the kind of response you had to the situation. In your tweet replying to this news, you said that this is a chance you're gonna have to work extra hard and Smurf in Academy next year, and that's kind of what I want to go to right now. I don't want to spend too much time focusing on this huge cloud that is, I mean, an opportunity like Scouting Grounds to show what you have in front of, LCS teams. Let's talk about what the future holds for you and how you're going to bounce back from this. Uh, we had a time set up for earlier to have this interview, which would have actually cut off the news of this happening, but you had to push it back a few hours, and you didn't tell me exactly why that was, but I'm assuming it was because you had an academy tryout. Am I
no,
warm?
no,
No,
that's unfortunately not true. I
that's tough.
actually that the reason I pushed it back was because I got a message last night from Whoopley, basically saying that there was something he needed to tell me, and so he didn't get into much of the specifics about it. And basically, I got a little anxious last night, so I was just like, I would rather hear that whatever he has to say first before I do this interview, so that I could fully focus. Because I didn't want to give you like a very like a half-assed interview, because
Right,
I would
right.
be constantly thinking about this in the back of my head. So I just wanted to push it back a little bit so I could deal with that first.
No, I understand that, and I actually appreciate being 100% here and present. And I just gotta say, this is huge. I'm actually very surprised, and I'm just actually honored that you actually did still decide to show up and do this interview because I definitely still this would have been hard for anyone, I think, to hear this news an hour and a half later, come back through and have this interview. But so we didn't push the time back today for an academy tryout, but you have been in academy tryouts in this week. Am I correct?
Actually, not this week. As far as I'm concerned, I haven't gotten any academy teams to reach out yet, but my contract expires tomorrow, so I hopefully will have more people reaching out. It's pretty unfortunate. I don't think I got invited to the Immortals ones and the FlyQuest ones that a lot of people are doing right now, but
Hmm.
I think that's just a missed opportunity for them, and hopefully other teams will capitalize on that.
Yeah, look, I was aware of the FlyQuest Academy tryouts going on right now. I didn't know about the Immortals ones, but I'm actually very surprised that you weren't invited to at least the FlyQuest ones. I think, look, like I said before, you played very, very well. I think this whole split. So, I mean, it's really tough to get back into the zone of the questions I had prepared because of this scouting grounds news. And I think they said in
Mhm.
their statement that you were still going to be able to participate in, what was it, like drills and interviews and whatnot. What exactly were all those things they said that you would still be allowed to be a part of, but not like in the games and whatnot?
I think in all reality, the most important thing that I still have access to is the one-on-one interviews with the LCS teams. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be definitely the most important part of, I guess, my scouting grounds experience, since the rest of it is pretty much just like presentations, lectures, that kind of stuff, which obviously has some benefit, but it's not like the crucial part of breaking into the scene, since the most important part is just to get on a team. So
Right.
I'm really excited to have those conversations, though. I think what I got to show in Proving Grounds wasn't the full extent of what I'm capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that if coaches took the opportunity to actually talk to me and like kind of get to know how I see the game and how I actually play, I think they will be really impressed.
And that's one of the biggest things, the visibility, the exposure that players can have to coaches, to other figures in this scene is 100% invaluable. And I definitely agree. If you can't play in front of these guys, just being able to get into a call with them, have that one-on-one conversation is absolutely huge. And it's something I always talk about with players that I've spoken to during the amateur arena when we had academy and amateur players come through and have these in houses. We have the show matches and whatnot. I always try to impress that exposure and visibility, branding to a certain degree, are all very important to get that break and get yourself into the minds, the ears, and the eyes of these coaches, these analysts that come through from the LCS and Academy to watch you guys play. But on I guess, a slight tangent, as a member of Cloud9 Amateur, were you able to speak to some of the guys, some of the coaches, some of the players like Blabber from the actual C9 LCS squad, or what was it like being on the amateur team, the third team for Cloud9?
There wasn't a lot of personal interaction, to be honest. I didn't have any interaction with any of the LCS team. I talked to Shern maybe once, I think, and then the main benefits were I got to work one-on-one with Vagar, which was really nice. And
Wow.
then we also got to sit in, or not sit in, but we got to watch the VODs of all the LCS scrims. So it was really cool when they were at Worlds, when they were at MSI, like being able to see them scrim against the best teams in the world was really, really helpful, I think. So that's something that I think most amateur players don't have access to, and is kind of what distinguishes me from the rest, is that I feel like I've seen what it takes to compete at the highest level, and I don't think it's something that I can't do.
Yeah, that's a huge resource. I did not know that was something that these amateur teams were privy to. I mean, not just seeing the scrims themselves with the players playing against some of the best in the world, but I'm sure you also got to listen to the comms and what the players are saying and whatnot in situations, and that's huge to know. What their thought process is, shot calling, whether it's kind of a calm situation and how they sound, or if it's like a dire situation in the scrim, and the kind of mental state you need to be in to succeed and turn things around. And even though it's a scrim, I mean, that is still extremely valuable information as an amateur player looking to up your game and get to the academy level in this upcoming split. So that's something that I don't think many people are really aware of when it comes to uh, amateur players and the resources that are allowed and afforded to you guys when you are on an LCS affiliated team. And I think that's really invaluable for a player like you. But let's move away from the game for just a sec. We'll get back to it in just a minute here. But
Okay.
one thing that when I first saw your name pop up when we got you for Amateur Arena, I've always want to ask you this question: where does the name eXyu come from?
It's I think a lot of people think it's like some crazy mystery, but it's really, really simple. Basically, I grew up in America. I was born and raised here, but my last name is like of Chinese origin, right? So
Uh-huh.
my last name is actually like the letters X and U. And so a lot of people like growing up, they would always ask like, "Oh, how do you say your last name?" And I would just say, like, "Oh, eXyu." Like that's how you like you just say like Shu, like eXyu. But or I would say Shu, but no one would understand like how to spell that, so I'd have to say eXyu. And I pretty much grew up just telling people my last name was like eXyu. And then my brother actually came up with this name, and I was like, "Oh, I think it's pretty cool." I think four letter names have generally done pretty well in the past. I think there's like names like Tien, there's like MLXG, yeah. And then yeah, I was like, man, XU there's like a flow to it. I like it.
What would you say is one unique thing about you and your game style, or the kind of player you are, the kind of person you are, that sets you apart from other players that we're trying to consider right now?
Huh. I think that one is really interesting. And I think I've thought about that a lot because there are a lot of talented players out there and think that I am. But I think
Mm-hmm.
that the biggest thing that distinguishes me from the rest of them is that I think I learn really, really quickly. And this applies to like school and pretty much everything I've done, I've been able to pick up really quickly and reach a high level um, at like a good rate. So I think that my biggest selling point is that I can become as good of a player as I'm like given the resources to become, basically. And I think C9 kind of proved that to me personally because being able to watch C9 LCS scrims, I realized like this is what it takes to be like as good as Blabber, as good as Perks. And I really think I was able to adopt that kind of lifestyle and that kind of like mentality for myself and show results to some extent. Obviously, we didn't do the greatest improving grounds, but I think as a player, I really developed this year. And honestly, it's kind of like for me, it's mind blowing. I'm like really excited to see what I'm capable of doing next year if I'm given an academy offer.
And that sort of development and growing as a player, one, I think it's a really huge thing to be able to notice things in your game, fix things in your game, and improve by yourself by just noticing things. But no one does that alone. No one improves by themselves. Can you talk to me about your the coaching you've gotten over the last year with Cloud9, and how effective that's been, your experiences with coaches, and what you think is the strongest quality that you appreciate in coaching for you specifically?
I think this year was really eye opening for me in terms of coaches. Like as you mentioned, this is like technically my second year playing
Yeah.
amateur, but really I think it's my first year since last year I only really played on random like teams that were very lacklusterly put together and didn't have official coaching. So I've always I didn't have that respect for coaches at the time. And then this year I came in and I had Tails as my coach. And obviously like he's a name that's been around in the scene for a while. So I
Mm-hmm.
came in with a little more respect than normal. And I think it was really eye-opening to me to see how beneficial a good coach could be for someone who's willing to learn and someone who wants to become better. Like the difference between a good coach and those like amateur coaches that I had back then is absolutely insane. I think Tails really helped me elevate my game a lot. So a huge shout out in terms of my success is due to him.
Staying on topic with development, who you are as a player, and where you're going in the future, can you tell me a little bit about, I guess, what is the biggest thing that you have improved on since last year with those other amateur teams? What's the one part of your game that you feel you've made a big jump in? And what's the one part of your game you think you have to work on the most moving forward that can get you to that next level to be a shoe in for an academy level team?
Yeah, I actually think the answer to both those questions is actually the same thing. I think at a mechanical level, there's no difference between me and any of the LCS players who play
Okay.
jungle. I don't think there's any difference, but I think the biggest difference comes from understanding of the game and discipline, which is something that I think I worked on a lot. I think even when you look at like some of the amateur analysts who were commenting on my gameplay earlier in spring, they would often refer to me as like kind of, or someone referred to me as a bonehead, but essentially it was someone who just doesn't really like think too much, just fights a lot, which I can agree with. I think back then I was a very fighty player. Like I always wanted to fight people, but I think this year the biggest thing I worked on was just understanding when to fight and really whether or not fighting is even important. Like I think recently I watched the Dom 1 versus SKT series, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that series just shows how how unimportant actually fighting is. Like the majority of the fight is dependent on the setup as opposed to like raw mechanical skill within the fight. Since everyone at that level really has should have that skill to some extent. Like there's obviously small disparities, but
Right.
at the end of the day, if you give a bad player a good setup, they can perform. So the most important part is just learning how to set up the situation so that it's ideal for everyone involved. And I think that's something that I didn't fully understand, and that I kind of missed out on even during Proving Grounds. But I think now I've kind of opened my eyes to that, and I think it's really helped me change the way I view the game in the sense that kills don't mean as much as I used to think they did. So
And that's a huge part. I think I hear that most often as well. The way you see the game, the way you understand the game, and the way you interpret the game and the game states is a huge, huge factor for how a team and how a player performs. I've heard a lot about, players believing that the first 10, 15 minutes is the most important part of the game. And then after that, it's about setup. It's about finding your way around making decisions for objectives and whatnot. So when you're on a team, you obviously have your ideas and your interpretation of how the game should go, and you have teammates who have potentially different ideas and different interpretations on what the game state is, how to respond to the game state, and different, I guess, mental states depending on how the game goes. For you as a player, I guess one, do you consider yourself an in-game leader? And if so, how do you respond? How do you react to situations to where there's disagreements on how the game should progress in the middle of a game? And if you're not, what do you think is the most important skill set or most important quality to have for an in-game leader for you to have that kind of trust and willingness to listen, snap of a finger when you do have a leader making shot calls?
yeah, I'm definitely the in-game leader on pretty much every team I've played on. I
Okay.
end up getting that role. I think partially due to my personality. I think I work pretty well with people, so I naturally gain their trust, and I think that kind of helps me work as a leader. But also because I think my role kind of naturally makes me the leader, since jungle is really, really it's really the facilitator of the game in the first 15 minutes. And as you said, like I think the first 10 to 15 minutes are the most important in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to facilitate that with my role is kind of what naturally led me to be a leader. But yeah, I think it's really important that the in-game leader is able to kind of objectively view things. I think early in the season, when it was like the Hecarim Udyr, like the power farming jungler meta,
Oh.
I think I understood the game pretty well, but I got a little bit too greedy with resources. And
Hmm.
so I think towards the end of the season, I started to understand that better in terms of like how to not just be a leader in terms of carrying my team, but also be a leader in terms of setting my team up for success on their own so that they can shine. Because obviously everyone on my team is extremely talented, so
Right.
it's important to give them like the opportunities they need for them to succeed.
I love that answer, XU. Being a leader isn't just about being the star, it's about knowing when and how to let other players be the stars and set them up for success and whatnot. I think, and as the jungler, like you said, that's definitely the most impactful role in the game. I guess you could maybe say support, because a lot of times jungle diff is support diff, and a good support can change the game. It's a broken role. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think
It's
support
broken for sure.
is just disgusting right now.
Mm.
But I don't want to keep you for too long. I have just a couple more questions for you. You mentioned earlier you obviously are of Chinese descent. Were you raised traditionally Chinese in your household?
What do you mean by that?
Sorry, can you clarify what that means?
Oh, I set that question up only to ask you about traditional Chinese food. I want recommendations on
Oh,
on on
okay.
on I guess lesser known Chinese cuisine if that was something that was a
Hmm.
thing growing up.
Yeah, I mean, do you like spicy food or no?
Bro, I love
Are
spicy
you
food. Put me
you
hey,
love
put,
spicy
put me
food?
on the
Awesome.
spicy food. Put
Okay.
me on the spicy food.
So like recently I just went to New York and there's actually like some restaurants there that are from like based off Xi'an, which is like a part of China, and they have tons of famous spicy food. There's like Sichuan food. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
Hmm.
they have like incredible spicy food. They know what they're doing with spices. Like when I went to Sichuan like 2 summers ago, I went to a city called Chongqing, which is like a province within that. I don't exactly know how China works, but it's like a city within the province, basically,
Right,
I
right,
think.
right.
But the air just smells like spice. Like when you walk around in the town, you walk on the streets, it's just spicy air. Like you inhale and you cough, but it's not because of the bad air quality. It's just so spicy. It's crazy.
Wait. Send me your number one Chinese food on Discord real quick. Just
My number one Chinese food.
yeah.
Okay, so I
Or
actually
give me
this is
I
the
guess top three, or if it's
this is the
hard.
sad thing. So I'm actually not into spicy food, which
You're
is
not
pretty
into spicy
disappointing for a
food.
Chinese kid. Yeah.
Oh
So
man.
my favorite comfort food is actually this. It's like stir fried egg and tomato. It's a very homey dish.
Hmm.
Um, it's something that I kind of grew up eating. You would just eat it over rice, and it's like it's hearty, it's homey. It feels like, I think if there was one dish that I could eat when I'm like sad or whatever, when I feel like I'm missing home, this would be the one because I just grew up eating it. My parents make it, and I think it tastes really good. So I don't know about this recipe. I just looked up egg and tomato, and I just sent you the first link I saw. So
Stir fried egg and tomato I mean, it sounds like a comfort food. It definitely sounds like a comfort food.
yeah.
I'm looking at this and I'm glad you sent me a link that doesn't have an autoplay video because I actually hate. Whoa, you actually sent me a link that doesn't have a 4-page story about. You know how recipes have like those. You don't get to the recipe right away. You get like a story
Oh, they're
about the
gonna tell me the
background.
backstory, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Right. You get the story, the history, the person's like whole life situation, and then it's like, okay, now that you know me personally on a first name basis, now I can tell you to preheat the oven to 350 or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, I might have to go ahead and try this sometime. Uh, Not spicy, but that's okay. Stir
It's like
fried tomatoes
it's
and
like a
eggs.
sweet kind of. It's like a sweet, savory, like a little bit sour. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it.
Sweet, savory, and sour. The alliteration is strong in eXyu today. But but this is one of those things that's just simple enough. When I asked Gamsu about his favorite foods, it was all Korean foods that I could not find anywhere. I think I can find this and definitely try to make this at some point.
Yeah, I mean
I'll give it a
this
try.
is like off the shelf ingredients, stuff that you'll probably have at home. Like it's just eggs, tomato, a little bit of sugar, some ginger.
Mm. Oh, I see. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Yeah, it's definitely I can see sweet. I can see
Yeah.
the tangy. Okay, I got you. I got you. The ginger. Okay, yeah.
Hmm.
All right, all right. I can actually try to make this and it won't go on a video, but I'll I'll hit you up on Discord, let you know
Yeah.
my thoughts on it.
Yeah,
Um
that'd be cool. You could send a picture of how it
oh
turns out.
I'll send a picture if it actually turns out good.
Okay, okay.
If it turns out bad, I may not hit you with a picture, but I'll probably tell you it's still amazing. I'll probably just tell you that I did a good job on it and let you believe that.
Okay.
But before I get you out of here, ma'am, one last thing. Let me know what is one thing about League of Legends, whether it's super positive or negative, that you can go on and either rant about or like show your appreciation about for hours and hours. You have to be physically stopped to stop your either rant or appreciation of this one thing.
Ooh. One thing about League of Legends.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Honestly, I don't know. I think the biggest thing that I would rant about is kind of regards esports as a whole. It's just that esports kind of give an equal playing field to everyone, I feel like, in terms of like competition. Because growing up, I mean, I kind of mentioned this. I don't know if actually you guys will see this because I wrote it in my Scouting Grounds questions, but I don't know if those will even be released. So I can just kind of explain it here. But basically, growing
Wait,
up, I've always
what
been
are
like,
Scouting Grounds questions first?
they interviewed us and like we wrote some questions, like some answers to questions, and I think
Mm.
they were gonna release them as like player background things. But
Okay, cool. Okay.
yeah, so I actually I'm naturally not the biggest kid, but I also skipped 2 grades when I was really young, so I've always been pretty small as a kid. So then it's just, even though I'm super competitive and I love like competing with everyone, it's kind of hard because I'm just physically like a kid and
Right.
everyone else is like way bigger. But that didn't really stop me until like it got to the college level of sports. Like I played varsity tennis through high school. I did water polo. I did all that stuff. But for physical sports, there's a limit when you're 5'7", you know. And so I guess that kind of pissed me off because esports, there's no limits in terms of physical uh yeah, there's no physical limits. So
Hmm.
as long as I believe that I can do anything, then it's possible, you know? Like there's nothing stopping me except myself. And I think
I like
that's really
that.
motivating since I think I could do whatever I put my mind to. So
I would love to show more appreciation for that sentiment, but can we just circle back to when you said you skipped 2 grades? Was that 2 grades consecutively in the same year?
yeah, so I went to Berkeley as a 16-year-old and I did 2 years before I decided to do that dropout, which kind of blew up on Twitter and actually got me the C9 AM job. But yeah, yeah. So my this whole break from school is kind of excused by my parents because I skipped grades. It's kind of like this is your reward for succeeding early on, and if it doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. But obviously, the goal is to do this as long as I can. So,
Okay, so my mind's blown. Which 2 grades did you skip?
I actually skipped grades really early on. Basically, what happened was like I just skipped. I didn't go to preschool or kindergarten. I
Okay,
just
okay.
went straight to first grade, and
Wow.
then I was actually too young to go to public first grade, so I went to a private school, and they had me take an entrance test, and I actually got 100% on the final exam for first graders when I was going in. But they said that putting a 4-year-old in second grade is a bad idea, like socially. So they put me in first grade, but my private school was tiny, and it only had 3 third grade kids, so I actually studied with the third graders when I was in first grade there. And they just said they labeled me as a first grader, but I was just only working with the third graders.
So,
And then, yeah.
so you were, just for reference, I was 8 in 3rd grade. You were 4 in first grade, learning with 3rd graders.
Yeah.
So, were you doing 3rd grade curriculum, or were you doing first grade curriculum, but there was third
I
graders doing 3rd grade curriculum in the same room?
I was doing so what happened was it was just one classroom
Uh huh.
and then basically it was like sectioned off by grades. And so even though I was in first grade, I would just sit with the third graders and do everything that they were doing. But technically I was in the first grade. So at the end of the year I took the first grade test and it was fine because I already did well when I
Yeah,
was entering.
you
So
were already a second
yeah.
grader in first
Yeah.
grade, studying with the 3rd graders, basically.
Hmm.
I'm glad I asked that follow up question because that's huge. I don't know if you've said that before in the interview, but that to me that to me is breaking. That's breaking news to me, honestly. I'm almost more shocked about that than the scouting grounds thing, which I don't want to make light of that, but that's huge. That blew my mind, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, hell, yeah, that's one thing. Hey, look, that's a great, I guess, segue into what you said before about there not being limitations. Like education, League of Legends, there are no physical limitations. If you believe you can do it, if you can put in the work and dedicate yourself to those kind of things, there is nothing that I think you can't do. And I think you have the right mindset. I think you have the intangibles at the very least. To where, like you said earlier, if academy teams aren't hitting you up expeditiously, it's their loss. So I want to get you out of here. We've been here for 30 minutes. I'm gonna give you one last thing. If you have anything you want to promote, anything you want to shout out, anything you want to just put out there, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Yeah, I guess kind of following up on the whole like scouting grounds questionnaire being questionably released, I will just shout out my brother for really helping me pursue this career. It was actually a crazy story. Basically, he came home with under the influence a little bit, and we had a long conversation. And in the morning, from like we had a conversation from like 3 a.m. to like 7 a.m. probably about
Wow.
life and my goals and everything. And at 8 a.m. like that morning, I decided to drop out of school and pursue this. So a huge shout out to him because I think without him, without that extra confidence from him, I don't think I could have done it since it's just like it was such a bizarre idea to me at the time, but now it's really panning out and it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. So a huge thank you to him and a shout out to my girlfriend too. She's always been helping me along the way, kind of like reassuring me and like motivating me to work harder. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, really grateful for the both of them.
quick little big bro and girlfriend buff never hurt anybody. So eXyu, this has been, I think, very eye opening, and I actually want to say thank you again for coming through, in spite of what has to be a really stressful and just a, I guess, emotionally reeling kind of day for you.
Yeah.
I do want to say thank you for still coming through and having this sit down with me. Really do appreciate it, and I wish you the best of luck. I Look, man, like you said, if these academy teams are not hitting you up, it is definitely their loss. I definitely believe you will be getting a shot sometime soon. I hope to see you at the next level in the 2022 spring split. But that is all the time we have for today. This has been The Script with Shellz, the #1 League of Legends interview series on the internet, hosted by me, and eXyu today was my guest. Great interview from him. And until next time, y'all,